Welcome to Unit 10. We are finally getting into what probably some of you have been waiting for all year. We are going to start our World War I unit. So let's just jump right on into it. As we get into the 20th century, European nations have been in a period of peace for about 30 years, and that was certainly not by accident. There had been attempts to outlaw war since the mid-1850s. There were hundreds of peace organizations that had formed, as well as peace congresses. But despite all of this, Europe would be at war within a decade, and it would spread across the globe. So while there were folks who wanted to and were working hard for peace in Europe, there were darker forces at work as well. Now, there are four main reasons you need to remember that led to World War I. Let's remember it as an acronym. MAIN. Now, those letters represent militarism, alliances, imperialism, and last but certainly not least, nationalism. Please be sure that you know what these letters stand for. We're going to start with militarism. So militarism is defined as the buildup of military strength to intimidate other countries. It's a policy of glorifying military power and always having an army ready for war, both manpower and weaponry. Citizens felt patriotic when their country had a large and powerful army. An example that you need to know is that Germany and Great Britain had begun to have an arms race, meaning that they were both industrialized nations and capable of mass producing weapons and military gear. It basically became a contest to see who would have the most and who would have the better weapons first. All right, alliances were another reason for World War I. Here's how you should define alliances. Agreements between nations to quote unquote help in case of war. There are two specific groups of allies that you need to know. There was the Triple Alliance and the Triple Entente. Now, the Triple Alliance was put together by Otto von Bismarck of Germany in order to isolate France. It was made up of the German Empire, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and Italy. The Triple Entente formed when Great Britain was fearful of Germany and what was going on there. Great Britain was looking for some allies. And the members of the Triple Entente were Great Britain, France, and Russia. Now, the I in MAIN stands for imperialism. Now, you really should remember what imperialism is because we just completed an entire unit on it. But imperialism is defined as when a strong nation takes over a weak nation. For example, European countries were still competing for colonies at this point. On to nationalism. I know, you are probably thinking, Ms. Roach, we've been talking about nationalism for 3 units now. Yes, I know, but here's where it becomes a major player in the world. You know that nationalism is pride in one's country, but I need you to add this to your definition. It is extreme pride in one's country and a desire to be an independent country with an independent government. This is where nationalism starts to get a little hairy and complicated. For example, on the Balkan Peninsula, there were many countries that were still under the Austro-Hungarian Empire and were desperate to be independent countries. Here's another example. Remember when we talked about the Franco-Prussian War and I told you that you'd hear about Alsace and Lorraine, the territory that had gone back and forth between France and Germany? Well, guess what? France wants its territory back from Germany because they truly were French. They were French citizens. Okay, so this part of the world is just explosive right now, specifically the Balkan Peninsula. It was called the powder keg at this time. I was just waiting for something, a spark, to set it off. And there were many nationalist groups on the Balkan Peninsula that wanted independence from Austria-Hungary. The spark that does set it off is the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, who was the heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne on June 28, 1914. The Archduke and his wife had been in Sarajevo, which is the capital city of Bosnia, and as they were leaving a reception at the town hall, a young 19-year-old man named Gavrilo Princip, who was a member of the Black Hand. He shot both the Archduke and his wife Sophia at point-blank range, killing them both. Now, there is a short video posted on Schoology for this unit about the assassination that I think you'll find pretty interesting. It's only about 8 minutes long. You don't need to take any notes on it. Just watch it and answer the questions. Okay, so what happens next? Well, alliances are called in, and I love this political cartoon. It's such a perfect example of how alliances work. Austria-Hungary finally promised to punish Serbia for the death of Franz Ferdinand. It took them 3 weeks for them to declare war because honestly, no one really liked Franz Ferdinand. So they took their time kind of waiting to see how things were going to play out. Anyway, Austria-Hungary had promised to make Serbia pay, but they were afraid that Russia would support Serbia. Austria-Hungary ends up turning to Germany for support and issued ultimatums to Serbia. Now, Serbia was given 4 ultimatums that they had to meet. Now, if you aren't sure what an ultimatum is, it's like when your parents or guardians tell you that you must limit yourself to 5 text messages a day, or they'll take your phone away for a month. Now, neither of these things are something that you want, but one is a lesser evil of the two. So, what would you choose? So, Serbia was given 4 ultimatums. First, they had to suppress or keep quiet any groups that were opposed to Austria-Hungary. They also had to fire all teachers and ban all books that did not support Austria-Hungary. Now, why do you think that they fired teachers and banned books? I want you to just think about that for a second. So the third ultimatum Serbia was given was that all government workers who spoke out against Austria-Hungary had to be fired. And finally, Serbia had allowed Austro-Hungarian officials to participate in Princip's trial. Now, I don't know about you, but if I had been in Serbia and I had been given these ultimatums, I wouldn't have been so happy. So Serbia refused. They absolutely refused to comply with the ultimatums. And so war begins. Okay, so here's basically a timeline, and you'll notice that all of these events happen within the time span of about a year. And here's where things get a little crazy, kind of like a bar fight scene from a movie. So you already know that on July 28, 1914, Archduke Franz Ferdinand was assassinated. Serbia was given ultimatums which they do not comply with. A couple days later, on August 1st, 1914, Germany declared war on Russia because Russia had begun to mobilize in order to help Serbia. Well, 2 days later, August 3rd, Germany went ahead and declared war on France because Germany was so sure that France would come to help Russia and Serbia due to their alliance with Russia. Now, in order to get to France, on August 4th, Germany marched through Belgium, which was a neutral country. This is a big, big, big no-no. In times of war, neutral countries are to be left alone. Well, now, because Germany marched through a neutral nation, Great Britain declared war on Germany because you just don't do that. You just don't march through a neutral country. Now, later on that month, August of 1914, Japan joins Great Britain and France in the Triple Entente because Japan wants Germany's colonial possession in China and the Pacific Islands. So remember that tiny red area on the Southeast Asia map from our last unit? Yep, that's the part that Japan wanted. Remember that they were becoming more imperialistic and a world power too. So fast forward to June of 1915. Italy stayed neutral for 10 months, but then they entered the war against, yes, I said against Germany and Austria-Hungary, because Italy saw Austria-Hungary as being the aggressors. I know what you're thinking. You just look back in your notes to see if they were in an alliance with Germany and Austria-Hungary. You're right, they were. However, Italy viewed the alliance as for defense purposes. So because Italy viewed Austria-Hungary as the aggressors, they did not feel obligated to help in this case. So there you have it. That's kind of the rundown, the basics on why World War I got started, what were the factors that led up to it. Make sure if you kind of zoned out on any of this, you go back, you rewind, and you catch up with your notes, whatever you missed, and I'll see you next class.